Live. And so if you were to transfer that to a humanoid, android, replicant, regular looking bipedal thing, like us, what would be the top of our hierarchy?
Head.
What?
Head.
That's a good guess, but no. What would be the center of our movement? If we're building, right, you built out from the center for the robot, right? And in this case, the robot's head is its body. But we would transfer that concept to people where the body and the head are two separate things. What do you think?
Would it be the feet?
What's that?
The feet?
The feet for just regular rigging. No?
Just for people?
For people?
Yeah.
That would be the top of the hierarchy, would be the feet?
Even if like we lead with their feet when we walk?
Okay, you're onto something there, but you...
It would be like this because this doesn't move, but it moves all the other parts.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and so for standard rigging, it would, this is usually at least a couple parts, right? And so what would be we'll do this later, but what would be at the top of the hierarchy would be the pelvis, right? Because if your hips move, that would be the thing that everything else comes along with, right? Emily, you're onto something there, and we'll, when you move the foot, the leg comes along, right? But not necessarily the whole body, at least in normal circumstances, right? And so, for instance here, right, and so I would have your notebooks out for this, definitely, especially if you had some problems. So I have everything on. I've got the stream on. The stream is live. Yeah, I think I got everything. Okay, and so this, what we have right here, this would be what I would describe as the, I don't like the word normal here describing this. All right, so if we unfold here and unfold there, we get our hierarchy, right? Of if we fold up some certain parts that we don't want to use or don't need to access, we have that. Now, the point that the gorilla video was making is that this is fine for making the robot fly around, right? So hold on, we're gonna call this robot normal. Rigging. Standard. Let's try standard. I like that word better. Do you guys feel better about that word? Yeah? Okay, good. Me too. We'll call it the standard rigging. Because now if I move the body, everything else comes along, right? And this is good for flying. And for right now, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and call this, we'll just put it in a new file for now. We'll get to switching later, but this is pretty good. And then I'm going to Control C. How do I make a new file?
A whole other robot.
Well, just a whole blank C4D.
Control
Control A. Very good. Some of you guys did put it both in one scene. That's good. And then how do I get back to the other one? Yes.
You got a window?
Yeah, window, and here at the bottom, let's go ahead and label this one. I'm gonna go File, Save As, Robot Swing. It's like a big band jazz played on synthesizers. There's a lot of possibility there. Okay, so this is robot standard. And here, the other way they described, right, the idea that the hierarchy matters here, is swinging from a pole. So let's get a pole. There's a cylinder. I'm going to, rather than rotating it, I'm going to adjust the primitive parameter so that, you know, just faces the right direction. There we go. So kind of like this, and kind of like that. And in general, the things with rotation segments, you can definitely chill that out a little bit. If you didn't, that's fine. But the defaults in Cinema 4D for rotation tend to be a little much. There we go. Now, we need to change our hierarchy here, right? Riley, why do we need to do that?
Change the hierarchy?
Yeah.
Because you want it to be to where if you move one object, you move the rest, mainly to the arms.
Okay, but how does that, why do we need to change it for the swinging motion?
Because this is the anchor point, not anchor point,
Because the body's not what we're going to be moving around.
Right, the body's not going to be the center of our motion for this
Yeah, that's
particular thing.
That's what I was thinking, because if you try rotating, it'll be all weird.
Right, and they say that in the video, right? Like the idea, I mean, theoretically it would be possible with the other rigging to make it look like it's swinging,
Yeah,
but it would be a total pain in the butt, right? As far as, because of the space, right? The space that everything would be in. Remember our world space versus local space, right? And so let's rearrange this. So I'm gonna, let's move this over here, and just sort of get it in general position first, right? Okay. And so now, I sort of need to take the robot apart, and because if I go to, ideally swinging is a rotational movement, right? And so if I hit R, okay, it's no good, right? I want my anchor point to be up here. And doing this, problem solved, right? Good?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you set up keyframes for the anchor point? Like, let's say that at the beginning, the anchor point is in the center of the body, so he can spin around, and then at some point he moves to change his position, and now the anchor point is on the hand?
No,
No?
you wouldn't want to do it that way, right? So we'll get to that, but the idea there, if you need to switch the anchor point, would be to do the thing where you have two different anchor points set up, and then in one frame you switch one out for the other, right? Ideally, this goes for all the programs, After Effects, any instance, like, I can't think of a single instance where animating an anchor point is a good idea, right? Usually you want to have a separate setup that either you switch to or something like that. Animating anchor point's not a great idea. Okay, so I moved the anchor point and I was able to rotate around the pole, but what's not so great about this?
Rigid.
But it's still rigged. I'm able to move this, the whole thing.
Rigid, it doesn't look natural.
Right. We can't. There's no to get the swing happening here would be not the best, right? And so now we need to make some adjustments, right? So here, ideally, what is going to be the top of my hierarchy in this swing configuration, Nicole? Yeah, the robot left hand. Right, so let's go ahead and get at least this correct. I'm just putting the L's in there. Okay, there we go. And so this part here is going to be the new top of my hierarchy. So I'm going to take this out. Okay, good to go. And then what would be the next part?
The body.
What's that?
The body.
The body. Who agrees with Taryn? Taryn, I'm afraid you don't have a lot of support in the class. Who disagrees with Taryn?
I think that it should be the rest of the arm first, and then the body.
Yes, yes. We got to break up the arm because we want to be able to bend. Taryn, you would be right if we just wanted to have straight arms, right? But we want to be able to bend at the elbow to make it look good, right? And so we have a couple options here. We can put this one below here, and if we rotate this, that comes along. Let's go a little bit further. We got that there. What could come next?
I'm moving the second half of the arm.
What's that?
Moving the other joint of the arm.
Yeah, the other shoulder here. Let's try it out. I see a problem here. What's going on?
That's like the circle. How those are connected.
There's an anchor point for everything else.
Yeah, we definitely want to move this anchor point. And so this is a primitive. Let's make our lives a little bit simpler here. So we've got this and this, right? So this sphere cylinder combination, do we need to have these separated for any reason, really? Like, do we have an instance where we're rotating the elbow separately from the lower arm?
Sometime. I mean, I guess if you want to make a unique animation of the grabbing.
No, this wouldn't inhibit that, right? This is just sort of like, these are really just two parts of the same thing, right? In fact, if we modeled it separately, they could just be one mesh. How would I turn it into one mesh so that we wouldn't have quite as many issues? And so here's a good one. This is one to write down for the notebooks, is that let's clean some of this up into separate objects. And so I'm going to turn this into one mesh. There's a couple different ways to do this. The cleanest way is going to be to connect objects and delete. Right here, right? So if I grab both of these, there, here and here. And so this is,
Are you dragging them onto each other?
no, well, I just, so it's connect objects and delete. You right click and you can get that, or Shift C, connect objects. There we go. This is what I'm going to use a bunch right now while I'm working. And so I'm actually going to drag it over here to the interface. So I'm going to hit Shift C, connect. Right, but it's a command, so you can look for it in Shift C, or you can do boom, this, right? So we get this. Again, Cinema 4D icon design, pretty good, right? This, I think, communicates what's going on here, right? Because we have a multi-part thing. We need to smush it together into one thing. So here and here, I'll hit this button, and now I get one mesh, right? So it does, you skip some steps here, right? I could hit C on both of those and then say connect meshes, but that connect objects and delete turns primitives into meshes and then smushes the meshes together all in one click. And so that saves you a little bit of work there. So there we go. So now we can make our hierarchy a little bit simpler. I'm going to do the same thing with the shoulder. The shoulder / upper arm. So I'll hit this, right? And so let's get these named a little bit better. This is lower arm left, and this is upper arm left. There we go. And so now both of these things are just one piece over here, right? Which just makes our hierarchy simpler. Does it make sense why this is a good idea?
Can you, when you get the chance, take a look at my hierarchy, because I think I did something wrong.
Okay. And so now it also makes it easier to set up our anchor points. So I can come over here to E, and let's go ahead and do this in an orthographic view. And then here, this actually needs to rotate around over here. Okay, now, do I want to do this with my fingers and the hand? Do I want to use this button to smush all those things together? No, I mean, not really in this one, because I mean, I do want the fingers to be able to move separately, and so it does make sense to have those be separate things there. Okay, so now let's try it out. Rotate hand. Oops, make sure I'm not in anchor point mode. There we go. Rotate hand, good. Okay, let's try the lower arm. Nice. Let's try the upper arm. Good. Okay, so let's take stock here. Swing hierarchy. Spelled that right? Right?
Yeah.
Nailed it. Two. Three. Connect objects and delete, right? This one's really good. This command, definitely memorize this one, because it takes away a bunch of steps, right? You don't have to hit C and then connect. It does it all at one time. And then 4, move anchor points. Good so far? Cool. Now, let's do the same thing over here. Now, we got all this arm going well. So, Taryn, now what comes next?
Body.
That's right. Now the body comes in play. And so this needs to go below upper arm left. Is that the body? And so I'm going to get the rest of the junk out of there. By junk, I mean right arm. And put this below, whoops, upper arm left, right? So, good. Anchor point, look good? Yeah, center of the robot, that's pretty much what we want for now. That's fine. Cool. Now let's do the same thing to the other parts.
Would it be better to place the center anchor point over by the shoulder for the body?
Let's see.
Since that's where it's going to be pivoting in when it starts.
Oh, right. Yep, because we moved the other one over there. So this one needs to go. And there. So we're there. Now, let's clean this one up. So there's a hand, that's fine. So this part here, I want to combine. I go ahead and hit that. This part here, those two, I want to combine. Kind of hit that. Cool. Next thing should be our let's get that out of there. So this is lower right, and this is upper right.
So will it, so do I turn in the robot when I redo it, or would I just post it Slack?
Yeah, I'll have you guys just upload it again. We're going to make some more changes to it.
And it won't be late even though it says it's late?
Yeah, that's the computer, right? The computer doesn't grade you, I do, right? I mean, I can
Okay.
tell when people turn stuff in. And when you guys turn stuff in, I see all of the stuff you turned in, right? It looks to you like you deleted the one that you turned in before, but I see that there was other
Yeah,
stuff.
just, I saw things that says to do it too.
Yeah, just don't just ignore it.
Okay.
Okay, so here. Okay, so this is the next one, upper right. Put this under here. Let's clean up this anchor point. It needs to go about there. And then lower right needs to go between upper right. This anchor point needs to go right about there. And then we should have the hand, which needs to go there. Our hand, I think, should be okay. Okay, so let's test it out. Looks good. Next one down. 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 Great. That anchor point seems like it could be a little bit better. There we go. Next one down. Nice. Wait. Yeah, that's all right. Next one. Good. Cool. So we have the swinging hierarchy here set up. Questions about this? Does this make sense?
Can I take a picture of it really fast?
Yeah, remember everything I do in here is recorded on the stream too. Right, I'm streaming to the home people, but then also it's there for you guys to review, right? Everybody, Misfit Pants says hi. That's Marvin, by the way. Cool. All right. Good so far? All right. Now let's look at talk about animating in terms of the other robot first. Okay. And so let's talk about animating. So those of you guys taking 184 first. We know about animating this robot. We're just about setting keyframes. A bunch of you guys, the animations were super fast, right? So I encourage you always to come in and set, a roughly correct number of frames at the beginning for what you're going to be doing. Don't just default to the default 3 seconds, right? Because sometimes you lay out stuff over those 3 seconds, but if you're going to have it do something and then something else, it's going to take more than 3 seconds, right? And I also need to make sure that we're working at which frame rate? 24. And where do I go to set the 24 frames per second, Cassandra?
Settings, project settings.
Right. Anybody know the project settings shortcut? Control D is in dog, right? And so in here, 24, right? And so I'm just going to think about it for a second and maybe try and do an acting, right? So, all right, that was like 4 or 5 seconds-ish, right? Somewhere in that neighborhood. And so down here, remember I can do that math right here. So I can go 5 times 24, 120 frames, right? That's what I had before, but so that your timeline is ballpark, right? Nicole's, yours looked really good, but it was way, way, way too fast. In fact, I didn't even see there was a donut the first time I watched it because it was all too fast, right? And so you really got to spread things out there. Another really good piece of information, I think this may have happened with yours, Nicole, down here. You definitely want to write this one down. Now that we're starting to talk about animating, this button has 2 really important options right here. So this all frames, okay? The default is that all, let's write that, default all frames on. Okay, what does that mean? It means that C4D is going to show every frame even if it has to slow down, right? This is why a lot of students making animations in Snip 4D that looks okay while they're working, and they turn it in and it's hyperspeed. It's way too fast. Why? Because maybe your computer isn't super quick, and while you're working, Cinema 4D is trying to show you all the frames, and it will slow down in order to show you every frame, right? So you may not realize it, but it's running at like 5 frames a second, right? But it's still the same number of frames. So that means it's going to take way longer in real world time. Does that part make sense? And so if you uncheck this box, then C4D will skip frames to show correct time. So it may look stuttier, right? It may look like it's stuttering. That won't be there once you render it, because it won't render stutter. It'll just render linear progression. But this, especially if you find this is happening, like it looks like your animations are going really slow when they could be going, they're not the right speed, then you would want to uncheck this box so that Cinema 4D shows you, Cinema 4D prioritizes the real speed, so you can make judgments about where your keyframes should be, versus having this checked where it will slow down in order to show you every frame. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you find, the gist here is that if you find your animations are running slow on your machine, right, and you may not discover that until you render, right? If you render it and you're like, whoa, that's way faster than I thought, then this is happening. And you should uncheck that box so that you have a better idea of like how fast the actual motion is. Once you put sound into Cinema 4D, this is super obvious. In After Effects, After Effects will pitch shift the sound to slow down. So you're talking, it sounds like that, right? But Cinema 4D will just repeat the same sound in order to stretch it out, in order to match up. So without the sound, this is sometimes hard to tell. But once you dump something in there, then it's obvious what's happening. But there's 2 different behaviors there.
It's good to know that happened to me last semester a few times. And the way I used to fix it was like exporting it to After Effects and like making it longer or shorter in After Effects, but I didn't know how to fix that in Cinema 4D.
Right. So if you find that it is all going too fast, then what you need to do is add more time, right, and stretch out your movement. So let's do that once here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just make something really, really fast. And so here, robot. Okay, setting keyframes in Cinema 4D. The best way is to press the button. This button right here sets a keyframe. Turns red when you set a keyframe. Right? So if I want to move this robot up, let's say it stays where it is for a second, for just a moment, and then it moves up. Set another keyframe. Yellow is no keyframe. And then by the time we get to here, set a keyframe, and maybe by the time we get here, it goes back to 0 or something for now, just to have some kind of movement. Okay, so it moves up and it moves back down for right now. Once we start animating here, we get the keyframes. They show up here in the timeline. That's what each of these are. However, once you start doing any animating in Cinema 4D, you want to move to the Animate view. This makes it look a lot more like After Effects and just gives you a lot more control over the keyframes. Okay, it looks like something is going on here, but I can't quite see it. How do I see it? F is Unity. H is Cinema 4D. So H is the view over here. And this is the curves, right? In Cinema 4D, these are called F curves. Right, that's what all the curves are called for function curve. And then keyframe, here's the keyframe view. A really nice part of Cinema 4D keyframing is that, say I've got this animation and I play it and it looks too fast. I want to slow it down. All you have to do is select all the keyframes and then grab this handle right there. This allows me to compress or expand a sequence of keyframes. Watch. And so I've got this selected. If I want this to be longer, I drag it out this way. See how it stretches it but maintains the relationship between the keyframes? If I need to make this whole sequence faster, I just drag it in, and it would be much quicker. Right? If I want to slow it down, I can drag this out, and now it is up and down. Okay. If you want to do that in After Effects, you have to hold down Alt and click and drag and everything. Here, it's I think much more obvious. Again, you have to select a group of keyframes to get that handle, but you can do it from either end to compress or expand a series of keyframes. Any questions about that? So that handle is super useful. There we go. Let's set some keyframes here for the shoulder. So I'm just getting it into position. So a little bit like this. There we go. All right, and so this and this and this and this. I want to set position keyframes for all of these. This is a little tricky. If you click on the dimension, you'll get just that dimension. If you click on the P, you'll get all of the position keyframes. Okay, so it's a little, see how I clicked on the X, I clicked on the P. See how those are different there, right? So if you want to click on the P, then if I set a keyframe, I get all of the position keyframes. But do I actually want to be keyframing position here? No, I do not. I'm doing the wrong thing. I want to be keyframing what?
Rotation.
That's right. So So over here, I'm gonna do this. Did this switch in the new version? Like a scale at the end? Didn't they do? Isn't there something different? Or is it the same? It's position, scale, rotation. Okay. All right. So there. There we go. And when it comes up, get some other sort of position. So let's just say the arms come up a little bit, like this. There we go. And again, select the same things. And keyframe those. If I need to see all these things, I can plus and expand over here. See all the keyframes. And also, your friend is control drag. Control drag also works for keyframes. And so, for instance, this is the first position over here, this one. If I want to duplicate that here at the end, I can just grab these and control drag them over here. Right? And so now my arms would go from one position to the other. Let's see. So I have some keyframes set, right? I'm able to have some sort of animation happening here. Make sense so far? Okay, cool. I'm going to save this as is for a second. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I want to make sure that what do I do to make sure I'm not going to lose all my stuff if the file gets corrupted? Yeah, in Cinema 4D it's called save incremental, exactly. In After Effects it's increment and save. Cassandra, the collect is to bring in all the external assets. It doesn't necessarily increment the actual file. So far so good? Okay, let's look at the other one real quick. The robot swing, because this might give us a couple other things to deal with here. Okay, so we want this to swing from one side to the other, right? And a lot of you guys did a really good job with this. If we take this, which one are we going to be doing? We're not going to be doing that one. We're going to be doing this one, so the P value. And so here, 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 we want to set a P keyframe. If we bring that up, we can set them all at the same time. See what happened there, right? So I shift-clicked all of these guys, and then I, just on the P parameter, was able to dial that, and you can see it's actually rotating all of them at the same time. Does that make sense? Right, so here's one. We want to go one way. Here we go. And actually, at the beginning, we kind of want to be the other direction. So I'm going to dial this over there like this. Let's hit play.
I spend so much time rotating like each part.
Right, so in this case, since everything is set up correctly, and the did I not record this keyframe? There we go. I'm back like this. There we go. Then we're okay. Because I want to rotate them all in the same direction, I can take that shortcut and just select all of them and rotate to make that happen. Did that make sense what happened there, guys? Okay, so now I want to have more of this. I need some more time. I also need to make sure I'm at the right frame rate. Let's say, how long do we want swinging for? 6 seconds. 6 times 24, 44. There we go. Let's go to the animate view. Cool. I want to go back the other direction, so I can grab these and just control drag. Looks good. Now I want to go back the other direction, get this one, and control drag, right? So we're looping here, but I don't want to use the looping function because we may want to adjust these individually later. And again, what is the default type of interpolation in Cinema 4D? What happens in between the keyframes? Easing. Everybody, right, in Cinema, again, the icons here show you what's up. So this is what you get by default. This is different than After Effects, because in After Effects, which one of these do you get by default? Nicole, is it this one, or this one? The first one, exactly. And what would you call that? It's a line. Linear, yeah, exactly. Linear. It's linear interpolation. By default in Cinema 4D, we get the easing, or the curved interpolation. And good. And so I can, that's not bad. We're sort of going back and forth like this. Now, I'm going to come back to this view and unfold over here. So this is good, as is, right? This doesn't look terrible. It doesn't look spectacular, but it's definitely passable, right? As far as swinging one direction, swinging the other direction. We're actually rotating around each joint. This is all good. However, this swinging kind of motion is something where we would want to have it look more like a tail, right? Where we have a wave-like thing happening, right? And you can tell over here, we already have a wave, right? If we look at each of these. But this is from one direction to the other. And to do some more wave-like kind of thing, we can delay some of these. So watch what we can do here. I'm going to take this one, and let's do it in this view. And so I'll take this one and move this over. And I'll take this one and move it over. Whoops, I just want to grab one. Let's just get this. Right, so if you don't need to squish it, you can just sort of move it. See the difference? Watch the robot. Watch the robot. Don't take your eyes off the robot. Right, so by staggering these, we get that delayed whipping kind of swing, which works really well in this particular context, right? We're only doing two here, so we're going one way. Why does it work like this? This is what it looks like now, right? And so this sort of delay here gives you this is essentially follow through, where as appendages that are further up the chain start moving the other direction, this one is still going the opposite direction. And then they all sequentially switch direction. I'm going to slow it down so we can see it in slow motion. How would I slow it down? I'm going to come back here to keyframe view, grab all of these, and drag this way to expand this. See how that gives us a much, much better swinging motion there? Okay, so this technique, I think a better name for this would be, this is essentially follow through, one of the fundamental principles of animation, in that once one part of the body stops, the other parts of the body continue in that direction. Right, so this is follow through. We could also call this a tail technique. Right, this is exactly what you would use if you had a tail on your creature that you wanted to look like a tail, right? Instead of like a flipper, right? Flipper versus tail, right? Sometimes you'd want flipper, right? If you're doing like a dolphin, right? But any sort of, even a dolphin, if it were swimming, would have some of this happening, right? Especially really long whales, right? We were watching some blue whale thing over the weekend, right? Whenever you see whale flukes, right? This would.
Last semester we saw that as overlap. I think was the name for that.
Yeah, follow through, overlap, right? The idea that it's going in one direction, it changes. It takes time for that motion to transfer down the appendage. And follow through steps, right? We set where the tail should be at one direction, right? Then we set the tail at the end of the other direction, right? So here, and then there. So you just set those two keyframes. That gives you flipper. And then what was the last part of the secret sauce here?
Staggering.
Say it again?
Staggering.
That's right. Stagger or offset components from root to end. In our case, the root is this arm, that hand, right? And the end is the other hand over here. Right? So this isn't like the Cinema 4D formula. This is the formula, period. Right? No matter what program you would be using, it would be the same sort of process. You have to build a hierarchy, get position 1, get position 2, and then offset or stagger all of those to get that sine wave happening. Marvin asks, or no, Jose asks if we can use this button for setting keyframes right here. This button does set keyframes. The only issue here is it sets keyframes for position, scale, and rotation. And so you can see if you are setting a bunch of unnecessary stuff that all appears over here, it just makes your job that much harder trying to get through all of the selecting, right? And so in general, you'll see me use this button when I'm just trying to quickly rough something out or just do something really fast. But when I'm doing it for real and really want to pay attention to what I'm doing, I'm almost always using this so that I'm not generating a bunch of extra junk keyframes that are just going to junk up my graph when it comes time to actually, do the work, right? Because this is where the motion really happens, right? All down here, when you're really paying attention to how things happen in between keyframes. And so the less distraction I have in this, the better. If I wanted to exaggerate this even more, I could come back here and select these. So I'm just control clicking, and I can, in Cinema 4D, holding down control allows you to drag the Bezier handle without tilting it. All right, that's in After Effects, it's shift. Here it's control. And so if I do this a little bit, hold on, let's get all these. So just control A. And I'll drag these Bezier handles out. And so now, there we go. Even better, right? Now I get a lot more lingering, and the motion as the swing happens speeds up. So just more easing happening there. So exaggeration, one of our other fundamental animation principles. The rotation's a little weird there, in a different spot, but let's write that one down. Control, drag, Bezier handle to avoid there we go. Overshoot, right, in terms of the keyframes. So it sort of locks it in. Does it make sense why I went through all that trouble?
It looks complicated when you, how you know what are the keyframes you have to select together to separate them? Because at the beginning they all were together, and then you took just a few of them and move them, and then another group of them, and then move them together and group them. How you know which ones exactly you have to use?
It needs when you stagger it, it needs to go from root to tail. Okay, so the displacement needs to go down the chain. And so I was just grabbing the I didn't do it quite equally. I might clean some of this up, sort of make it a little bit more equal. But you want to offset each part, ideally the same amount. I mean, that would be the best starting place, right? And so, and in Cinema 4D, right, I look at it and, I just try to click them to the grid so that it's roughly an even amount, because it's so easy to compress or expand, right? Because as long as I get the raw relationship correct, then I can easily compress or expand it. That's a good question. Everybody understand what Cassandra was asking there, right? How do I know which one's the slide? I slide the end of the tail or the end of the thing over the most, and then work my way up the chain, try and create an even stair step down in this direction right there. Sound good? Okay. Why? What? Let's see here. We're gonna, polish these up for Monday, right? And so we're gonna do this at 3:40. I have to walk over to the music building for a few minutes, and so let me keep talking now, and then you guys can work then, and I'll come back over and we'll keep going from there. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So, so that's the story of building follow through in your hierarchy there, right? Why? Because this looks good. It's a fundamental principle of animation, right? It makes things not look like they're all one part, right? And we build a hierarchy, we get one position, get the other position, and then just offset. Gives you this motion. Let's look at the other bot here. And so, how do I delete keyframes? Here we go. Like, I don't want this. How do I get rid of it? You can click, right click. I want to get rid of all the keyframes. You can go to animation right here. I right clicked on this animation, delete track. Just cleans the slate there, right, for the whole track of everything else. Same thing here. Let's delete those. There we go. I'm gonna step back a little bit here. Okay, a little bit more about rigging. We'll get into this into more. But what we have right here, you guys set up everything with, there's only one thing you put position keyframes on, and that was the body, right? And then you rotated everything. Okay, so there's two limb rigging techniques. The one that we went over here before we did this, where we used rotation down the limb. This is FK. What does FK stand for? Forward kinematics. Forward kinematics, okay? Forward meaning down the limb. You work, in order to position the hand here, you would need to rotate, 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 right? You're going forward down the limb. How is this forward? Because ideally, in any limb that you have, the axis, this direction, this should be, what axis is forward? Z, exactly. So it should be Z, 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 is down the limb. Okay. The whole object, like what is my Z axis? This way, right? Because this is forward for my body. But in terms of my arm, this is forward for the parts of my arm. Does that make sense? And so this is called forward kinematics, right? Not kinesthetics, not, there's a lot of confusion that happens there. Forward kinematics. This is easy to set up just by setting up the hierarchy, right? If you set up the hierarchy, you have forward kinematics. You can rotate down the arm. The other option here is to position the end of the limb. This is referred to as IK, or, you may have guessed it, inverse kinematics. Let me demonstrate inverse kinematics. And so inverse kinematics is where we take the end of something and use that to control the whole arm. In arms, this makes a lot of sense, right? So let's look about how to set that up. Everybody get this part? Okay. Again, remember it's all there. And so let's go ahead and consolidate a little bit. Shift C. All right. Just get my button set up again. There we go. So I can get these two, combine, these two, combine, and then the hand, I want that still separate. Let's get our anchor points set up. So this is just what I was doing before. Let's set these up. This is the lower arm. This is the upper. In order to get this right in the middle of the ball, I'm going to turn on snapping. And now you see it'll snap to axes, and so snapping it to the center of the ball makes that a little bit easier. Same thing here, right? Snapping is here. This is a toggle, right? So it's off, on. Now I turn it on. I'm in anchor point mode. So now when I drag my anchor point, I can get it to snap to that dead center vertex rather than eyeballing it, right? You guys saw how my arm had a little bit of like weird, that's because the anchor points were not dead center, right? I was just sort of eyeballing it. And so if you put them in dead center, you're gonna be able to rotate exactly around the center by turning on anchor point and snap. Cool, there we go. And so now let's reassemble. Lower under upper, hand under lower. There we go. And so I've got this here, this here, and this there. Excellent, okay? So what do I have right now? This is FK, rigging, forward kinematics. How do I build IK? IK is more complicated, right? Because you've got, I mean, when you use it, it will seem simpler, right? Because you just have to move one thing. However, to set it up, it takes some doing. let's go ahead and put this underneath the body for now. And I am going to select from the root to the end, right? So this way. So select, there we go. I've got all 3 right there. And then under character, there is create IK chain, right? So that's what we're building, an inverse kinematic chain. You can also get to that with your Shift C, create IK chain. So with those selected, right? Now look, I did not select the body. I just am doing the arm. So it's from the root of the arm to the end of the arm. I didn't select the fingers because they're not going to be part of this. So from here to here, and then create IK chain. Look what it did. It did 2 things. It gave me this tag right here. This is the IK chain tag. It's where you go to adjust all things IK chain. You notice that it put it on the root of the hierarchy here. And it did another thing. Up here, what's this? Goal. Now what happens if I move the goal? Here we go. So now, in order to animate the arm, all I need to do is move this target, and everything else stays where, adjusts accordingly.
So that's when you can use the recorder, instead of making the keyframes like one by one, you can just start recording.
Okay,
Like
we did the project like that in. You did that one in Cinema when I did. Yeah, that concept of recording the keyframes isn't linked to IK chains. You could do it with anything. If you wanted a block to move across the screen, you could use that's called Cappuccino in Cinema 4D, the system for recording keyframes. You could use Cappuccino to just go with a block. It doesn't have anything to do with this. It was just combining 2 separate things. Okay, so now I can. However I set the keyframes, my arm moves like this now.
That's pretty cool.
Let me do the steps one more time. And let's adjust this a little bit so we get better results. So I'm going to delete that and delete that. So now, before I do this, most of the time, your limb, every joint doesn't go in every direction. We're like this, right? Like the shoulder kind of goes all around within some limits, but the elbow, does not. It just does this part, right? We can turn other things, but it's just there. And so it makes your life easier if you bend the arm slightly in the direction that you want things to go before you build the IK rig, right? And so here, I'm having it go forward, and I'm putting a little bit of a bend at the elbow there. Everybody with me? And so now, I'm going to do this, and hopefully get a little bit better results. So I'm going to go to, again, Character, Commands, Create IK Chain. And now if I use my goal, right, now it knows what direction because this is the part, immediately as soon as you see this, everybody's like, oh, this is great. Why did that guy wait a whole week to show me this thing, right? There are parts that are easier, but then when you start thinking about that, you're like, how does the elbow know where to go, right? And the answer is, it's calculating these things, but by giving it that little bit of bend, it gives it the hint of which direction the elbow should go. If you go to the IK chain tag and drill down, there's a lot of stuff in here to work with as far as how things are moving and rotating, right? There's a lot of options, super fun one. Right, and put in some squash and stretch where everything goes like this, so on and so forth. Let's see what we'll do with that. Uniform scale. Right. We don't need to worry about that for right now, right? There's all these sort of more fancy things. Turn this down. But this makes it much easier to move. Now, if I move, the other thing though is if I move the robot, watch what happens. What is not part of the hierarchy? Why is the hand stay put? Let me rephrase the question.
Because you should be moving the hand instead of the body. The body is on top of the hierarchy or the goal.
So it depends what you would want to do. But most of the time, you want to take this hand goal and move it down here so that as everything moves around, things come along, and then these keyframes would be relative to the body. Does that make sense? Right? So I moved, the way I got my hand to move along with my robot is that I took the hand goal and I put it below the rigging over there. Does that make sense for everybody? Let's okay. You gotta, this is much easier, clean up and simplify hierarchy. That's what we did with that connect objects and delete, right? To just, if it's not gonna move separately, smush it down into one mesh, right? That's the good rule for now. Select from root to end. So from shoulder to the end. If you're doing a leg, it would be like from your pelvis to your ankle, right? Not to the toe for a human, right? Because if you think about where you're putting your foot as a human, it's more pelvis to ankle, and then the ankle would be a separate thing, right? I'm not doing this usually. Right? So select from root to end. 3. We are going to use it's under character, menu, and it's a command, create IK chain. And what is if we want the hand to move with the body, make the target a child of the body, and then animate the target. Animate the target what? For an FK chain, we are rotating. For an IK chain, what parameter is getting changed here? It's kind of a trick question. Like, what am I doing? I'm just moving, right? For an IK chain, for an FK chain, we were rotating. For an IK chain, we're just moving. We're moving the position of the target. So this makes a lot of sense for the flying and grabbing robot, right? Does it make sense for the swinging robot? No. Clearly there, in order to get that really great motion, having it set up with the FK makes much more sense. Everybody got this one in their notes? You guys over here too? Tara and Riley? Good? Right, so we got two big tools here. Whether you're going to do IK or FK. Right? And IK, once everything's cleaned up, create the hierarchy, select from root to end, create IK chain, good to go. Okay, so the first thing I would do is probably make a new, don't keep what you've got in a file. I might do a save incremental. That way you can go back and do this. If you've got a save incremental from before where you set keyframes, I would go back to that file. That way you can just forget about the keyframes you have and rechange everything else, right? And so you're going to want to set up a new flying robot that has IK arms. And you're going to want to set up a new swinging robot that has FK set up with the follow through. And for Monday, don't worry about making them all in one scene. You can do two separate scenes, right? One and then the other. Let's focus on getting all the rigging stuff right for now. Okay, let me take a look at everybody's stuff here, and then I got to step out for a minute. You're relaunching cinema?
Yeah, because I did stuff and I had to exit out because I messed it up. So this is my swimming one, and it's all a mess.
Okay, so I think this goes, you heard me say it before, fixing, bad. Redo, good. Right? I can't stress that enough. Like the skills it takes to sort of fix the stuff is just tends to be way more difficult than sort of doing it again clean, right? And so I would go ahead and copy and paste your bot out of there into the blank file, and then try and set it up. And we got to simplify the hierarchy. How do we simplify the hierarchy so that we don't have these many columns?
Combine.
Connect objects and delete, right? Is the button that's gonna just take this and then into one thing. Once you simplify your hierarchy, you need to go back and adjust the anchor points. Yeah, because once you smush things into one, it'll I think it averages the anchor points. So, no, it looks like you got the robot thing, right? So,
This is all the same.
okay, yeah, so this is before you set any keyframes?
Yeah.
Good, alright, so you need to go through and smush some of your hierarchy. Taryn, it might be a good idea, would you mind switching zones for a second? If you set in between Belle and Nicole, I know they could both also, if you got, they all went together.
I redid the robots. So what would I do? What was the next thing? How would I swap the models?
So, did you have a swing?
No, I did, but my own. But it completely broke when I transferred it over from my computer at home. So I just remade it. Now you said that I should do the swap the models.
Right, we're not going to worry about the swap models. We want to build the two rigs vectors. Right, so you want to build the flying robot with IK arms, and then
Yeah, I mean, I read a robot, so.
Yeah.
Let's make another one of these.
yeah, with no keyframes, get rid of the keyframes, and then build the flying with the IK.
Is that that walking one that we did?
No, the IK is the one I just went through, where we made the IK change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
I don't have any of the
Any of the what?
like where it's this changed to fit, but I don't have the
Angle.
yes, angle
Yes.
changed.
Right, so you want to, I might go in there and take the robot apart into the separate parts so that you can then smoosh those into one. You just try to, right, so like you want to take the shoulder out of it. Right, and so you're gonna wanna connect these objects in this, those two, connect these two objects in this, and you're gonna want to use this axis. Right, and so by combining these and combining these, then when you put it back together, it will that connects objects to select click objects. Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
And then shift C.
oh, shit.
Right, and then this is where you can search for any key. If you want to connect, there's a lot of connects. You want to right click objects. Oh, oh. Yeah, there, control Z. Yeah, you did connect objects, you want the connect objects and delete. If you just connect, it'll make a new one. Connect objects, it will do the same thing. Shifts. This is very fun. Very fun. There we go. Control is. Yep, but keep the system. So. You good?
Question. Just me being complicated. Here.
What did you use this for?
Espresso for compass when I was adding follow through and I was to know how to input a number into this
So what, so you don't have any keyframes, you just use this?
I would just use 4 keyframes because I just use a slider. So there's 1 keyframe left for the slider.
And then this.
So it started at hands to the forearm. Hand to the forearm delay. Tries to use memory for delay with time and the history level of the frame. And then how do I input a number to delay it further?
Oh, to delay it further?
Yeah, let's say I wanted to frame the output number into history level, a higher number level. I feel like there's a cleaner way to do this.
Yeah, I
Let's
mean,
just move this around.
yeah, but I mean, this. Use this, but,
No. It's a bit messy.
history, the memory is essentially delay.
Yeah. What a history level. Change of value and I should put these over. I'll probably try these over later.
I mean,
This was
I would
just-
do the keyframe, right, just stick on it, but then.
Yeah, of course. Go for it. I didn't understand how to do so. I was looking at some of this to see if maybe I could have. There's always multiple ways to do something. Just one way. It's like, well, I know. I know it's hard to do.
So this is. Oh, yeah, yeah. So when you do connect objects, it'll smush everything below it to the higher. So you gotta get it out to the higher key. And then. Okay, I'll be back in a minute, alright? Work together. And the other rule when I leave the room is don't set anything on fire.
if you're going to, yeah, if you're gonna use FHA,
I'm not very good at this class. That sounds familiar. Stop it. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. Just cleaned up long pieces, so I have the hands on my shoulder. So now I need to, I guess I can probably make 2 of these. Supposed to have 2 different hierarchies for the different pages.
Yeah, they are gonna be different, but I don't know, like, you can do like that, but, I feel like they would get confused by like having all of them together, not putting 2, like, a hierarchy. So I just followed this, making sure everything's labeled correctly, just having nothing wrong with that, and then this is for the line, so then you put 1 arm under there, and then another arm before, a hand, and all across. And here, at the left arm would be the other arm, and so on. Oh my gosh. It's like, it's so nice guy, cause you can see like the eye, like I'm holding it up. But, we use literally everything it says. Yeah, I think I got it now. Is it the ink spots? I think so. I think there's probably just something wrong with it. Oh my goodness. Did you find a date for your PNG for the
my screen is touch screen. So. Oh. Goodness, I'm so sorry. It's okay.
I don't know what is going on. Yes. Bless you. I got it working. Oh my god, no lines. It was the anchor points. For some reason now. Things are so confusing. Like arms, things. It's like talking to a genie.
Oh, I hate when my glasses keep fogging up.
I just punch it over my nose. Is that everything? Yeah, but for some reason I can't do that. I always have to like breathe in through my nose and breathe out through my mouth.
I usually don't wear my glasses. I wear them to like computer see far away, but like I have to wear them with the computer because then I'll be like,
Oh my god. Eric used to take care of myself.
well, it's almost 4.
You can set something to be like what it's aiming for. So like a goal. Maybe I should do that. Okay, everything's so zoomed out on this screen. Like I can't see the pictures, I just want to please just see. I did I think like 180 for the 2.
How's it going? Good?
Yeah. I got the thing, I'm blanking out the.
What is it called? The IK chain?
Yeah, I got the IK chain done. I'm gonna put it on my one at home.
Okay.
And I also, yeah, so.
You want it underneath the body. Underneath the body, yeah. So that if you move the body, the hand goals come along. And Letitia did get registered for December?
Yes,
Yeah.
for
200.
R200.
Yeah.
So the whole animation thing was worth show that on Monday?
Yeah.
Okay, am I free to go?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make some work on that and. I'm not forgetting anything.
Then I think they're closer to installing Cinema 4D R24 on these machines. I didn't know about it next weekend or yesterday. As far as the rotating, the turning there? Or what?
Yeah, just wanted to look over.
So check, go back to the beginning, check the anchor points. They're equal to the same. Show you our objects. So. Yeah, so ideally you want the orientation of the anchor point axis to be the same. Alright, so if you rotate around a little bit, see how you're, in your case, you have Y facing up and Z out, right? Ideally you want the Z to be in motion, but as long as it's the same. So that looks good, right? So keep on going. Good. So yeah, see how you got the coordinates? Yeah. So I might go back. I might get rid of the key frames. Then go back and not only can you move the anchor point, but you can rotate it, right? And so go back and reset the anchor point so the orientation is the same. Because then we're only keyframing the one parameter, right? But that would be different. It will be fixed in one direction. Yeah, one direction.
You're like you saw. Oh my god, it works.
Are you making a hand grenade?
Yeah.
I have a question. Like sometimes I have troubles to move the anchor point. I select the anchor point and then I'm trying to move it.
Yep, because it's still a primitive. In order to edit the anchor point, you need to
Okay. And then I have one more question. Sometimes I see a menu here like yellow, red, some yellow text that I don't see. I feel like you have it over here.
Oh.
It's like in the one of the rules.
So we can proceed to the point. But we're still doing another
Maybe it's a better version?
yeah, I think, yeah, that's gone in the new version.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Belle, is that right? You guys, the 24 doesn't have the object structure tab over here on the right? These guys over here, are those not there in 24?
Oh no, they're not there.
Right, and so are they over here under window?
Do you know
Those are useful when I was looking
Oh,
for the
but
basic materials.
even though all of them aren't there, the structure tab should be like where attributes tab is now in 24. Which is, it doesn't look like that. I don't know.
Can I go to you?
Yeah, so what are you looking for specifically?
You don't like
Oh, so you're saying the content browser? So this is the content browser where you can look for something that's pre-made. Yeah, it's this little box now. The reason they have it that way now is because now you download them instead of having them already all downloaded on it. Now you can download just what you need. It saves memory. So when I'm switching it to download and then you can and you can search for it the same way you used to search it. Yeah, so now it's up here. So the content browser's up there now, and that tab you from before is structure. All of it's everywhere now.
Thank you.
Alright, so in the lab, you need this layer. So you have files. There's the user data. There's the user data tab. You see it? So you just, where it says ready, you can have it. And then you can.
There's a couple different ways to do this. Let me show you one, and Belle can say what she's doing for her other one. So grab your notebooks once. So the other thing here is that if we want to do this, we got to animate each finger, right? A lot of times with things with hands, usually you want to do this or this, right? There's not a whole lot of, you do that way more than manipulating each finger individually. Does it make sense? Right, so instead of having to, like if you had to animate a whole hand, instead of having to animate, right, you know, pinky, ring, middle, right? It'd be good if you just had close, open, just one slider. One way, there's a couple different ways to do this, but the fingers, because I control drug them to create them, I'm in local object mode right here. Everybody see that? It's the same parameter. Not that one. Not that one. There. It's the so the last parameter here, the Z rotation, the blue band, right? The blue band here, the blue band here, and the blue band here, right? So it'd be great if we could just animate one and have it do the same thing to the others. So the way you do this is driver versus driven. So here we go. This finger here, I'm going to set, this will, I'll only animate this one and I'll use this to drive the other ones, right? So I'm going to come over here. It is this parameter that I want to control. And so this one is the driver. I'm going to right click over here. Expressions. Set driver. Right? So right click, expressions, set driver. And once you do that, did I do it? Yeah, then it's fine. And now, without doing much else, I come over here to the next finger, same parameter, right click, expressions, set driven. And in this case, we want the same value. And so I'm going to say absolute. once you do that, pay attention right here. See this little box with the triangle in it? This means that this parameter is now connected to another one. And over here, I'll do the same thing, right click, expressions, set driven. Now if I go ahead and animate the top one, all three animate. So driver is the one that you use, and then driven for the other two. That you don't need to worry about any coding or anything if you just use that. You're just essentially you're just sending one number to some other place, right? I want you to take this number, whatever it is, and send it over to this other thing. And let's take that one step further. What that is doing is this tag right here. So this tag right here, this is the Cinema 4D nodal programming called Espresso, right? It's not spelled like properly named espresso. It's Espresso because it starts with an X, because it's extreme, right? The Espresso expressions, right? And this, just by doing that set driver, set driven, it made this code for you. It says take this rotation number, send it over to this range mapper, and then plug it into here. Right? So just by doing that set driver, set driven, it did all this for you. This whole thing here, this is a whole world where you can program other objects, send data from one place to another place, all sorts of crazy stuff. But we don't need to get into that. We just need to, choose which. This works because you see how I select it? The blue axis is the one that I want to rotate around, right? This is why this is simple, because they're all oriented in the same way. If that was not the case, then you could still do it, but it would take some more doing. And so now I don't need to worry about setting keyframes for each finger. I just keyframe the very top one, right? So I can set a keyframe here, and here, and over here. I did something wrong there. I'll get to it in a second. But I'm just going to keyframe this one. And the other ones come along. So then I could just keyframe one. So what I would write down in my notes, the important thing is send data from one parameter to another. So number one, select source, right? Figure out where the data is coming from, and then you say right click, expressions, set driver. Okay, and then select target, or let's call it destination. There's already things we're referring to as target. And then right click, expressions, set driven. And in this case, absolute. Right, absolute versus relative numbers. That's kind of like global versus local object space. Does that make sense there? Right? I think all of this stuff that we're doing today, just easier to animate, less parameters. This is part of what the rigging is, right? Is that you can think more like how movement, about how you conceptualize movement, right? When I do this, I'm not thinking, right, right upper arm up, left, right, upper, lower arm out, index finger, right? I'm just thinking about the end target, right? I'm simplifying it. And so the same thing here, right? I don't think, when I go to open my hand, I'm not thinking index finger. Just open, closed, which is really what you want most of the time. I guess the overarching rule today is that having your rigging techniques, learning those, so that you can change the rigging to make the best movement for the type of animation you want to do, right? So that we change the rigging to do a really good swing, and then we change the rigging to do really good arm movements and finger movements, right? And so thinking about what am I doing here? How does this thing have to move? And then rigging it rigging it so that you can get to that target easily, right? You're not going to fight your rig to try and make that animation happen. Sound good? Okay, awesome. So take 2 on this for Monday. I'll put a thing up on Canvas, hopefully later this afternoon. Sound good? Okay. Misfit Pants says, interesting.